Hare Krishna. So today we will be reading the verse number 43, the last verse of the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga. एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् एवं बुद्धिः परं बुद्ध्वा समस्तभ्यात्मना मानमात्मना जाहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् एवं बुद्धिः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूप दुरासदम् एवं thus buddhe to intelligence param superior buddhva knowing samstabhya by studying atmanam the mind atmana by deliberate intelligence jahi conquer Sashatrum the enemy Mahabaho mighty armed one Kamarupam in the form of lust Durasadam formidable. Thus knowing oneself, translation, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, so mighty armed Arjuna, one should study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Purport by Jivan Giri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. This third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without considering impersonal voidance the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind and intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic posture can never help a man toward spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic posture can never help a man towards spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. So in the series of these verses, beginning from verse number 37, that Lord is telling about lust, that lust is the lust which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and which later transforms into wrath, is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. And then there are different degrees of lust, like fire covered by smoke, mirror covered by dust, and embryo covered by the womb. So we, individual and living entity, also has different living grades, degrees of lust. Lust means not just sex desire, but the propensity to enjoy separate from Lord Shri Krishna. Sense enjoyment is categorized as lust. And then we have characteristics of lust, that it is never satisfied and it burns like fire. No matter how much whole life an individual tries to satisfy his senses, but even till death he is not satisfied. Even at the death he wants sense gratification. It does not go away. And if there is a, that's why people try to devise means so that they can never die, so that they can enjoy, they can gratify their senses for eternity. Now then after that, Lord tells the strategic positions captured by lust, that is the senses the mind and the intelligence. And by occupying these positions, the individual living entity's knowledge is covered and he is bewildered. Then, in the very beginning, we must curb this lust. How? By regulating the senses. So, the current civilization, the current debate about development and everything. So there is a constant, there is stress on what? Gratifying the senses. That the senses should be gratified. We have different ways and means. We see advertisements everywhere that do this, you'll be able to gratify your senses. Do this, this will give you the best pleasure. Watch this cinema and you'll be happy. Use this car and you will be happy. Use this soap, this beauty product, and you will be so looking so beautiful, and then you can enjoy. So in the current civilization, the focus is not on regulating the senses but giving away to senses, to gratify them more, to indulge them more. But we see from this verse that Lord Shri Krishna is telling that we must regulate the senses, and in the very beginning itself, should not give us some way and then after that, okay, after some time I'll control. No, in the very beginning itself, we must curb this by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So when we indulge in sense gratification, our knowledge and self-realization are destroyed. Then Lord says that the hierarchy, that working senses are superior to dull matter, mind is higher than senses, and intelligence is still higher than the mind, and the soul is higher than the intelligence. So by using this hierarchy, we can try to control the senses. The practical application is that we should know that we know, okay, that mind, senses and intelligence, these are the different places where the lust has occupied places. Now to defeat, to evacuate, then purify and again capture these places back from the lust, we must know how to defeat the lust. So we know the positions, now we also know the hierarchy. So by different processes, prescribed processes, we can engage our mind, we can engage our intelligence, and we can engage our senses in Krishna consciousness, and thereby we can defeat this lust by engaging, giving the senses engagement in Krishna consciousness. We divert them away, we direct them away from material sense gratification. And by doing so, we are beginning the process of purifying ourselves, purifying our mind, our senses, our mind and intelligence from lust. Now in this verse, Lord is telling that knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence. O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So in today's verse, Lord is telling that how one will be able to conquer this insatiable enemy of the lust, or of lust. So previous verse is a sort of precursor to this verse. So once we have understood the hierarchy, now Lord is telling that study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. What should we do? One should study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and by spiritual intelligence strength conquer this insatiable enemy. Now in the previous verse we know that the soul is separate from the intelligence, soul is separate from the mind and soul is separate from senses. We are not these senses. If our mouth is gratified, our eyes are being gratified, we are not being gratified. It is the senses which are being gratified. And we falsely think that we are the enjoyer, we are enjoying through these senses. No, it's the senses which getting some pleasure. And because of this lust, since the individual's knowledge and self-realization is covered, we are thinking that we are this body, we are this mind, we are this intelligence. I am doing this, I am doing that. This all illusion is because of the lust. So one has to kick away this lust, and for doing that, engage in Krishna consciousness. It's a slow, it's a gradual process, but it depends upon the sincerity of the seeker. And based on his sincerity, the process can be fast, can work fast also as well. It, we have seen the lives of Prahlad Maharaj, who learned this science in the womb itself of his mother. He never came in personal contact with his guru, but he had heard in the womb itself. So there is no age limit. Dhruv Maharaj, he at the age of 5, within 6 months, he got darshan of the Lord. He perfected his life under the instruction of the Supreme Personality, Srila Narada Muni. And we have example of Khatwang Maharaj, who within a moment perfected his life. So one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness. Sri Goswami also says that engaging the senses in Krishna consciousness, in chanting the holy name, in hearing about Krishna, and in remembering Krishna. So in that, senses and the mind and the senses must be engaged. And this is a very fast process. If one sincerely does this, then one will very quickly see the results. And we also see and that how to further engage the minds and senses in Krishna consciousness. In the verse number 30, if I'm not wrong, yes, 3.30, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigita jvaraham. One should be perform his prescribed duties in Krishna consciousness, thinking about Krishna. Nirashi, we should not expect the fruity results. We should do all our prescribed duties as a service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Nirmama, nothing is mine. Nothing is mine, then whose it is? It belongs to Krishna. So we should use everything as understanding that it is the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and should be used for his pleasure. And Vigita Jaraha, without feverish mentality of lethargy. So without lethargy, we must perform our prescribed duties, understanding that everything, my body, my mind, the clothing which I am wearing, the laptop which I am using, the phone which I am using, the books I have, the place I am living in, the water I am drinking, the food I am eating, everything is property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This body is not mine. This body is the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It has been given to me for a time being, so that to facilitate me to execute my duties in this material world. And I must do them for the pleasure of their lordships, always thinking about them, always meditating upon them. So when I do my activities in this way, so I am engaging my mind by remembering. I am engaging my mind by chanting. I am engaging my tongue and my ears in hearing. When we offer wonderful scent to their lordships, we are using the senses of smell in their service. When we are taking prasad, sense of touch, taste, smell, eyes, everything is engaged in Krishna consciousness. However, if we go out and eat something which is not offered to Krishna and only for our own sense enjoyment, we are going away from Krishna, because at that time our consciousness is, I'm eating this because I like it. I like the taste. By eating it, I'll get so much energy. Or by drinking it, I'll get intoxicated. So the center is not Krishna. Center is I am, me. However, when we are taking prasad, center is Krishna. This food is without onion garlic. When we are preparing itself, at that stage itself, our mind is absorbed in Krishna consciousness. This we have to offer it to the Lord. So it must be clean. When we are working, therefore, everything, our senses are engaged in Krishna consciousness. Because we are preparing the bhoga for offering it to their lordships. When we are in the process of preparing bhoga, our hands, our legs, our mind and our intelligence are engaged in the service of Krishna. And after once it is cooked, we see from our eyes and then we offer it to their lordships. Again we are chanting mantra. Again we are engaged in Krishna consciousness. Mind, senses, everything is engaged in Krishna consciousness. After that we take away the bhoga, put it back in the serving vessels, clean the vessels. We are again engaging our mind, intelligence and senses in Krishna consciousness. And after that, everything cleaning and everything. When we take prasad, our sense of touch, we are touching prasad. First of all, it is prasad, it is a spiritual element, it is not no more material thing. And it is related to Krishna. When we honor that prasad, our consciousness, our intelligence gets purified. We see Krishna, we see prasad, we offer our prayers, our mind and intelligence are engaged again in Krishna consciousness. When we take prasad, we are thinking about Krishna, how wonderful this, we are grateful. It is in mode of goodness also, so it uplifts our consciousness. And then we go and work, and since it is prasad, it is sanctified food, it is offered to the Lord, Lord has taken it. Our consciousness also becomes Krishna consciousness. It happens gradually, but it happens. So one who on a daily basis, on a regular basis, takes only Krishna prasad, he follows the four regulative principles, he chants Hare Krishna, he reads Srimad Bhagavatam, he or she hears about Krishna, then they will see that in a matter of time, that their consciousness is changing. Their consciousness is going away from the thoughts of me and mine to the devotion service. And one is able to do his duties more better, being unattached from the result of the activities. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that one must perform his prescribed duties. Nirashi nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigdajura. How does the practical application takes place? It does not takes place just by mere thinking that I am doing this, I am doing that. No, it doesn't happen by that. It may happen for a day or two, maybe for a year, if one is very disciplined. But if one is able to do that for long, that means he will naturally be going towards Krishna consciousness. But if we follow the process like this, then this is a sustainable process, it's a stable process, and we will eventually be successful in this area. And Srila Prabhupada is mentioning the purport that this third chapter of Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness. And we have seen this evident from this verse, in series of verses on lust, and also on how to perform our work for satisfaction of Lord Krishna only. Previously 9 to 15, we have seen about work, how must we perform our work as prescribed duties. So this is a directive to Krishna consciousness. This is wisdom of Srila Prabhupada. This is devotion, that he has given a devotional purpose to Srimad Bhagavad Gita. There are very lot of philosophers who have given purports, translations from a personalist point of view, but Srila Prabhupada has done it in the right way. Therefore, it is known as Bhagavad Gita as it is. So, directed to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. without considering impersonal avoidance the ultimate end. So one must consider oneself as eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are certainly influenced by the propensities for lust and desire for dominating resources of material nature. Desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul, but by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. The example we just gave, for instance, doing one devotional activities of taking prasad only. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden. One need not to. But by gradually developing, sorry, Srila Prabhupada is saying, yes, what Srila Prabhupada is saying, correct. One may not give up. We do not have to give up our material work and prescribed duties all of a sudden. But by developing Krishna consciousness, we can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind by following this process of Krishna consciousness. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the maturity stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man towards his spiritual life. So these are mechanical processes. They will never help us. Theoretical, they are mere theoretical. We have to go towards Krishna consciousness. We must have to. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence, and the higher intelligence we get from reading books, literatures, spiritual Krishna conscious literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, etc. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport for the third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Karma Yoga, or the discharge of one's prescribed duties in Krishna consciousness. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna.